Good morning, lads. I'm Chris Fisher. Martin's behind the camera. What we're hoping to do is, for novices in particular with this DVD, is to explain the lathe to you and all the bits and all the things that go with it. For instance, chucks, 4 prongs, stuff like that. And then we'll move on to explain the headstock and various lathes. So let's crack on. This is my lathe. It's an Axminster hobby lathe. It has variable speed, which we'll go back to in a moment. This is the headstock. This is what we call the bed. And this is the tailstock. And this, for some reason, is called a banjo. Have you any reason why it's called a banjo, Martin?
No,
no idea.
Slightest.
So the banjo moves back and forth, and there's your tool rest. It goes up and down. This supports a piece of wood that goes between the centres. Really, that's all there is to say. If we go on to the headstock, this is what drives everything. Let's take the chuck off for a start. Should have done that before. So here we have a spindle, and this spindle is driven by some belts at the back. Now you get 3 types of lathe, I think. This is a variable speed, like I said, so on this belt the speed will go from 400 to 2000. If I move it to that belt, that pulley there, it will go from 2000 to 4000. So if I just show you, so that's 400, and you can hear the speed going up now. And down again. It's brilliant. You can control a huge piece of wood, a small piece of wood. For instance, if you're doing, just going off a moment, hey Martin, just pass us a chunk of wood, anything biggish. Yeah, that'll do. If this was completely off centre, it was a big chunk of wood, I probably wouldn't do it on here, because you're asking an awful lot of a little lathe. Better still, well done, Martin. So if this is between centres, you can imagine that's going to have to go fairly slowly for me to turn it. If I was doing a finial, up there, just shows you we're really well prepared for this. If we use this to do a finial, we could have it all the way up to 2000. Because this is such a small item, that's such a large item. When they're turning, the speed out here is more than it is at the centre. So consequently, the smaller the item, the faster you want to go. I hope I've made that clear. Right, back to this. The normal lathes we used to use before we had variable speed used to have about 4 or 5 pulleys on here, and you'd start off on one that would start you off about 400, then you'd move it up and it would go to 800, you'd move it up and you go to 1000, and you keep moving it, and that's a pain. If you've got a piece of wood that you're working on, you need to go fast, you need to stop the lathe, move the pulley up, put it back on again, tighten it up and carry on. With this one in particular, I can start at the slow speed, I can knock all the edges off it, get it to a nice round, and I can be increasing the speed as I go along. So that basically is a variable speed. Is there anything more to say on that, Martin, do you think?
No, I think that's... You've got an electronic control on there as well, haven't you?
Sorry, yeah, electronic control. It's a button you just turn around. But I very rarely move it. It nearly always stays on that. Well, I don't think I've ever moved up to the larger speed, so that's 2000 to 4000. Because even if you do a little finial, 2000 is really quite fast enough. So, absolutely brilliant, love it to death. Would hate to have to go back to changing pulleys again. The next type of lathe is what's called a direct drive. It's electronic. And this is my other one. Just switch it on. It's a Nova DVR, and this is run by a computer. I think that's fair to say, isn't it? A computer chip, whatever.
Yeah.
It's just warming itself up now. Now, there's no belts in this. It's all control. It's direct drive. Not actually quite sure what that means, but it means, I suppose, when it turns over, that goes. There's no belt changing or anything. This one is pre-programmed to start at 500 RPM. So if I was to switch it on, and with this one, it's just, you just press that, and if you listen, you can hear the speed. That's up to 1,000. I don't know what this will actually go up to, probably 4,500, 5,000 revs. I don't think I would ever want to go that fast, to be honest, even if you're doing something small. So it's literally the next button and the speed drops away again.
What's the advantages of having direct drive instead of the pulley, Chris?
I think the torque is better.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just so much. Because that is such a little lathe, you can't expect an awful lot from them. With this, you can expect an awful lot from it. The beauty of this one is it also is programmable, so you can preset whatever speed you want. So if you want to be able to switch the lathe on and it to immediately go to 1,000 revs, you just preset it, it'll go to 1,000 revs. It's also got reverse on this, so instead of it turning the normal way, this way, I can press another button, put it on reverse, and it will go the other way. Now, it is said that if you're having a problem sanding, if you put your lathe into reverse, it could help improve the sanding. Personally, I don't use it. I've never found a need to. The only thing you've got to remember is actually when you put it in reverse, there's a little grub screw down there that you must tighten up. Because if you put it in reverse, what happens is your chuck will undo and come off. And it's quite. This is an Axminster chuck. It's one of the old precision ones. It's a weighty item and it can do a lot of damage. And we actually will go into safety later, which is really, really important. Anything more to say on that? Well, there's a lot you can do with it. Stuff I never even use on here. I just turn it on and we go. It's as simple as that. This is it's a great lathe. It really is. Trying to think. Oh yeah, another. What is good about this? Once you've switched it off, it presets itself back to your 500 RPM, which is so. In other words, when you switch it on, if you ignore that, you can't be going really fast, which is a good safety. If you understand what I mean, it's a really good safety point.
I suppose one problem with the ability for a lathe to go in reverse is that if you have been reverse sanding and then you then go back to turning or whatever,
yeah,
then making sure that you have switched it back to forward,
yeah,
or you could be in a bit of a stuck, couldn't you, really?
That's actually, yeah, that's a, yeah, good point, Martin. Yeah, if you do put it in reverse, remember just to press the button, because it's a forward and reverse button there, to go back the normal way. Otherwise, well, we're not even go there. I don't even want to think about what could happen there.
Do all lathes have reverse speed?
No, this one doesn't. None of the other lathes I've had have had reverse on them. I never use it. It's there if you want it. I don't need it. It doesn't mean that I'm great. It's just that I can't actually find a use for it.
Occasionally I've used it for sanding.
Have you found it?
I've used it. I've got a jet lathe and it's quite good for just doing sanding where you get bits which do not want to sort of come up smooth. Yeah. Just put it in reverse and you just get the fibres going the other way. It just takes the fibres off and it seems to work.
I have tried it and it must be me. I've just really not found. I just persist with sandpaper. Yeah. Which is something else we'll go in, which is actually, yeah, that's really quite interesting. Actually, we could do that, couldn't we?
Yeah.
You know, in another DVD, the sanding bit, and then put it on reverse and see if it makes a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Good
we'll
try.
do that. Where were we? Headstock. Oh yes, this headstock is fixed. It doesn't go anywhere. This lathe, if we go over here again, if I was to undo, let's do it. If I undo this, whichever way it is, that should do it. And if I pull that lever over, the headstock moves. It moves to, I think, 22.5, 45, 90, and it will actually go all the way around. So if you can imagine, this lathe, go back to this one a minute, this lathe will turn 12 inches over the bed. Say 11.5, to be honest. That's its maximum. I can't do any more, head won't move. This one is 16 inches over the bed. So in other words, it's 8 inches from there to there. So I could turn 16 inches. If I turn it that way, and if you listen, making me out a bit, there it is, it's locked. That is locked now. What happens is then I can then bring that out and use that. So your limit now is whatever diameter catches on your bed bars there. If I turn it this way, there's your limit. What limits you now is your speed. You're obviously not going to go really quickly with that, because no matter how good that is, it's going to go rock and rolling. If you've got a VB 36 or whatever it is, it's built like a Dalek, and it's not going to move anywhere.
What's the largest piece of wood that you could turn on that?
Oh hell.
Safely?
I wouldn't like to say 30 inches.
Yeah. That's a big bit of wood.
It's a big bit of wood, isn't it? Personally, I'm not really interested in doing big bits of wood. If I get rid of them for a moment, I'll show you this a little bit. Should come undone. Right, get rid of that. So this is the outboard turning. So that slots in there, like so. And this is totally adjustable. It goes in and out, and as you can see, it swings all the way around. Have used it, done some wall hangings, which were quite interesting. They were about 24 inches and about yay wide. I'm not doing a lot of it. It's a bit scary, to be perfectly honest. You've really got to watch your speed. The one problem I have found with this is, if you can imagine you're here turning and you want to turn the speed down or turn it off, you have to imagine my 24-inch piece of wood is there. So I can't do that. So I have to come gingerly round here, maybe get a long handle and switch it off, because it's a bit scary, quite frankly. But great, it's got its uses. If that's what you want to do, this is ideal for you. Normally when you buy this type of lathe, you have to buy this extra. It doesn't come with the lathe. So in other words, you wouldn't have all this bit here.
So as a first sort of a beginner turner, what sort of lathe would you recommend getting?
If you're just starting, yeah, one of these. Quite frankly, one of these. Variable speed is a must, because you're going to be messing about changing the belts. I would certainly get, I love the Axminster, And they're really good. If anything goes wrong, they take it straight back, fix it, and send it back to you. I've found no problems with them at all. This is ideal. It's so you can turn 12 inches over the bed. I'm not sure what that would be when the chuck is on it. It's not an awful lot, I have to admit, but this is what they call a midi lathe. The mini is even smaller.
Can you extend the
Oh
bed?
yeah, you can buy the beds to go on there that takes it another 18 inches, I think it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's not a problem. In fact, John Lyles, he kept an old bed off a previous model of this, and he's able to attach it onto there, so he can do quite a long spindle. So for me, this is terrific. Once you've got your techniques, you can use the tools, and you're fairly capable, then would be the time to think about maybe swapping to another lathe where you get more over the bed, longer spindle, and probably better quality. This is not the greatest quality in the world, but it is really good enough. It really is good enough. I use it quite a bit. I bring it to the club for hands-on nights. All the lads, whoever want to have a go, they do have a go, and no complaints. Beauty, variable speed, excellent.
Very similar to the club lathe, the record lathe that the club's got.
Yeah.
Variable speed, nice little lathe, compact.
Yeah. And it's more solid.
Yes.
Yeah, let's be honest.
It's quite solid.
Yeah. You get what you pay for. I think these have gone up to about 297 quid now, something just under £300 I saw at Newark.
Newark show.
Yeah. I think I've had this about a year now, somewhere around that, and I think I paid 240 for it, something like that. And it's great. And it's great actually having two lathes. It really is, because, well, you can think about it. You could be doing one thing on one thing on another, and I do tend to turn a few things at once. I mean, if you have a look around, you can see there's all various things waiting to be done, things drying out. Okay, does that cover the lathes, pulleys, and?
There's various different dimensions for the thread.
Ah, right. Excellent point. This is your bog standard 1'8" thread. Most chucks come with a 1'8" thread, but it's now going over to what they call, is it 33? The thread is 33.
There's some of them are more metric, aren't they? Some of them like M3 or
M3,
M's and things like that.
Yeah, whatever. It's the more metric. That one is a 1 1/4 inch 6 thread, which is considerably bigger than this. So consequently, it's able to take bigger items. You're limited for that. If this was a swivel head, it's going to put a big item put an awful lot of strain on that spindle, and it could bend the shaft. It is possible. Now, if we just go to chucks for a moment. Oh, hang on. We better do one other thing first. Not only chucks fit on this, a 4-prong drive fits on it, or a step centre. Now, a 4-prong drive, and there's the giveaway. It's got 4 prongs on it and a centre. So what that does, I think we're going to need you. Oh no, that'll do. That'll do. So what happens is that goes in there, that goes on there, then you bring your tailstock up, tighten it up, and that will actually drive that round. The same applies, and you'll need a knockout bar for this bit. Goes through your headstock and knocks that out. Same applies to the step centre. That's got a centre as well, but lots and lots of teeth. So instead of the 4 that's on the other one, you've got lots on there. And as you can imagine, when that goes on there, that centre goes in. Excellent, you can see that. That centre goes in, and it will push right against those. Let's do it. In the centre, bring up the tailstock, tighten it off, and can you see it? There you go, and that's gripped on there now. So that is holding that. So, like if you're doing between centres work and you have a piece of square wood, should we do that, Martin? We just show what it's like? Just a piece of square wood off there.
Something worth mentioning about the Morse taper size, Chris.
Yes.
The difference in Morse tapers.
Absolutely. So we want to turn that down to, what do we call it?
Spindle?
We turn it down to
cylinder.
Cylinder! Yeah, okay. So that goes on there like that. Tighten that up. And what we'll be doing later on is we'll be turning these down to a cylinder. But what would happen now is turn to a cylinder and we'll put a chucking mark on there. Now a spigot. And the spigot will then go in the jaws. So that's how you get it from that shape to be able to go onto the chuck. Okay, is that alright?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Are you with me so far?
Yeah.
Right, where's my knockout? So what did we want to talk about then, Martin?
Morse tapers.
Morse tapers, yeah.
Different sizes of Morse taper.
Record lathes, all the standard range have, it's a Morse taper 1. And that is really quite small. Why they've not changed it, I don't know. This is a Morse taper 2. This is, you can say, what nearly all lathes are, aren't they? All Morse taper 2. There are some Morse taper 3, but I think they're the older ones, aren't they? Like Graduate and stuff like that, I think. So that is the Morse taper. And you can see the shape of it. Tapers off there, and that bit goes in there. And it's friction that holds that in there, as you can see. So when this is brought up, that's actually forcing it in. Okay, so that's a Morse taper 2, Morse taper 1, records, and I think it's only records now, to be honest. So that holds your piece of wood that enables you to get a spigot on whatever piece of wood you're standing. Even if it's a bowl or a plate, same applies. It goes between centres. Yeah. Same applies. If you're doing a plate, that would go on there. You'd bring that up, and then you'd be able to put your spigot on. And your spigot could go in your chuck. Right. Moving along nicely. Should we go to chucks next? Does that
Can
the
do,
next thing?
yes.
I've got 3 chucks. I'm dead lucky, really. I've got this one, which is the Axminster Super Precision, and it has some gripper jaws on it. Now the jaws, you can see, are quite thick. They've got serrations on the inside and outside, and that I turn a lot of wet wood, and they're ideal for wet wood. Real good grip. This is also an Axminster, and it's called a K10. Yeah, which is a 4-inch chuck, same as that one. This is the cheaper model. Again, it's a 1-inch 8 thread that fits on there. Problem is, that won't fit on that, because that's a 1 1/4 6 thread. So you buy an adapter, which is just there, Martin. Can you see it there, my good lad? Thank you. So if I want to use that, or that, which is a 1-inch thread, put that on there, and then that goes onto the thread in the larger one. So 1 1/4 6, 1 inch 8, using an adapter. You can get most adapters for most lathes now. Yeah. So that works on that one, and it also works, because that's a 1 inch 8, on there as well. I think I paid about 20 quid for that from Tool Post. So it really is worth it. It means you can move your chucks about.
Saves by different chucks for different lathes, doesn't it?
Exactly, yeah. And a lot of the chucks nowadays, the manufacturers, they don't just do one size, they will do various sizes, so it immediately fits onto your chuck. But if you've got an older lathe with a different thread on it, they're ideal. Yeah, this also is an Axminster chuck, and I love it to bits. It's just a little one, and the jaws came with it. I think 3 sets of jaws came with this. So there's a set of pin jaws, a set of C jaws, and again, as you can see, they are little gripper jaws. And like I said, I do a lot of wet turning, and I want to make sure I've got a good grip, and that's the depth of the grip, which is brilliant. And if you look at the grip on that one, it's just that distance there, and that's okay. Don't get me wrong, but I want to feel fairly safe when I'm turning wetwood, because they're usually big pieces, and with it being wet, they crush the fibres really well. Does that cover?
Yes.
Yeah. Jaws. We've said gripper. That one there. These are called O'Donnell jaws, and what it is, this is a set of 3. And I like these because, as you can see, they're tapered. So I haven't got a big chunk like that one, a big chunk of jaws moving around. This tapers off. So there's little screws in each one of those. I can undo that, take this top layer out, and it gives me the ability to hold a big spigot. I can put them back in. I've got a medium spigot. If I undo that again, take them out, I've got another set of jaws that actually go really, really small, and all they do is screw in there. So you've got 3 sizes of jaws that fit on one chuck, and it's great. I don't know how much they cost now. I've had it a long time, but it gives you the ability to move from a big to a medium to a small grip. Yeah, can you think of anything else that I might have missed? Jaws.
They've got indexing.
Yeah.
Some have indexing.
Again, it's something that I don't use, because there's no indexing on this. There is on this one. Those little holes there. I put that on there. If I was doing, if I wanted to do a design on something like, let's pretend that is turned and finished. What I want to do is make some marks in there. What I would do is I can lock that off so that doesn't go anywhere. I have a little mark on the top of the lathe that points to one of these little squares. What I would need to do with this, because it is a basic lathe, that will not move, so I can then mark or do whatever I want on that surface. I can undo that and then move it round however far I want to go, and I can lock it off again, do the mark, and keep moving around to as many as I want. Unfortunately with this one you've got to count them. If you go to that one, there is shows you how often I move this, Martin.
Yeah.
Yeah, it won't go anymore. There's a little window and it's got all the numbers on it
Let's go for a move.
for the indexing. Right, there's the little window and it tells me what number it's on. So all I do is lift that and then it's locked off. And there I can see the number locked off. So all I'll do is lift it, move it to the next number and drop it and it's locked off. I don't know a lot. I've got to be honest. I don't know a lot about it because I don't use it. I have no need for it.
Marking. I find them useful for, as you say, for marking lines on things to get when you want to cut things at every 45 degrees
Yeah.
or
Yeah,
something like that.
yeah,
Useful for that. That's about the only time I've used it.
yeah. Well, I'm simple. You see, I stick with things I do. Things I like. I do remember, hand on heart here, I did do something that required indexing, and it took me ages to work out. In fact, I had to draw it out. And I did 1 to 24 because there's 24 indexings on this. And when I marked it, the wood on there, they didn't match up. They didn't work. This is how thick I am. And it was when I was counting them. I was counting them wrong. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And it took me a while to think. Well, I was wrong anyway. We'll not go there. I was wrong. Yeah. Anyway, that's indexing briefly.
There's quite a variety of different jaws you can get for the different chucks.
Crikey, yeah.
I've just bought. I've got a Record Power RP2000 little chuck just like that one, and from the Newark show, I was able to buy a set of pin jaws for it. What was the other one? I can't remember what the name of the other one was. But a set of pin jaws because it goes down to really fine. What's the sort of minimum that will go down to? So if you were trying to...
the centre is also a chucking point. We mustn't forget that.
Yeah.
Well, we could find out. Are your pin jaws square on the inside or round?
Round.
Round, yeah. So in other words, that will hold a little piece of doweling.
I think it goes down to about 3 mil. I think something like that.
Yeah. Well, I don't think that would go that far.
No, that won't go down to 3 mil. But what's the ideal sort of size that you would want to turn your spigot?
Excellent. Yes. Glad you're here, Martin. I'd forgotten that bit. Awfully pleased.
Because you could squeeze in a nice bit of wood into that hole there, but your jaws are sticking out quite a way, aren't you?
Yeah, yeah. The optimum, just going to go here a minute. When you're gripping something on your jaws, they really want to be at the optimum. That means at the roundest. You can, if this was opened out and you held something in there, it would be gripping just on the points. It wouldn't be gripping in the centre. And that, I guess, is okay, but it's not as safe as it should be. So the way to measure, a simple way to measure the optimum of your jaws is if you get a parting tool, thin parting tool, okay, and put it in between your jaws, and then tighten it. They are roundabout at the roundest. Yeah.
I've learned something new today.
You look astounded.
I look astounded. What thickness parting tool is that?
It's it is 2. Is it 2 mil?
2 mil.
Yeah, 2 mil. What I do then is I will measure a recess. So if I'm going to do a recess, it'll be done on the outside. So I know that the optimum recess I can do on there is 35 mil. Okay? So if I'm doing a recess in something, it wants to be 35mm. That gives me a little bit of wiggle room should I measure it wrong. If I'm doing a spigot, I will measure the inside, and that is 25.5, call it 26. So if I do a spigot, it wants to be 26, to be absolutely ideal. But like I say, if you were to do it a little bit bigger, it's not a great problem. If you do it a little bit smaller, it's not a big problem because it'll still grip. But with using that, it does give you a little bit of wiggle room if you're not right. Now how do you measure your spigot? If you've got, that applies to all chucks, all the chucks I've got. I do it all the same way. That's in my jaws, and I'm turning this spigot now. I could use them to mark, as it's spinning round, mark the spigot on the wood. Yeah, are you with me there? Should I do it? Would it? No, that alright. I can then stop the lathe and I can check it. 25.5. There's another way you can do it. I set up a pair of those and I glued it. This is actually for the bigger chuck. So when your wood is on your lathe and turning round, like so, you can have that at the back and your parting tool at the front, and then you can just, what I did was I super glued those together so it's always the same size.
Seen it done with spanners as well.
Yeah.
People using them for, certainly for some of the small spigots on things, use a end of an open-ended spanner.
Yeah. If you haven't got a pair of those, another thing I do sometimes use, I'm just going to disappear again for, yeah, and they've disappeared. No. Ah, there. Yeah. I made that. Now that fits this chuck and both the other Axminsters. So if your wood is spinning round, you just hold that at the back of it, you have your guide. Piece of wood.
Chris's top tip number 2 today.
These are all that. I would love to say the mine and I invented it, but I didn't, Martin.
It's simple things like that.
It's simple though, isn't it?
It's, you know, when you look at it, you think, oh yes, that's a really simple idea, and it can save a lot of time.
And it can, yeah, it can.
And certainly if you're having to repeat your production turning where you want to
because you need to stop your lathe, it could be going round, you can hold
things.
that on there and just part it to the right diameter. Okay. One thing I forgot to mention, Martin, was the tailstock. The important job that this does is it actually supports what you're turning. That is obvious. So the best thing is when you bring it up, don't jam it in. What I would do, because there's movement there, I would stop it just before and then tighten it up and then move it onto your piece of wood. Because I've found what can happen is if you take it straight up, you've knocked it off centre. I mean, that is not, there is movement there. Yeah? So if I do that and then lock it, the chances are that is not actually sitting straight. Does that make sense? So I would just a bit before lock it off and then wind it in. Right, tailstocks, there are various types. This one is again an Axminster. Martin was just saying he's got one, and these tips come out, and he's got 5 different tips he can put on there. There's a cup shape, there's a screw, what else? Well, and various sizes of these. These revolve. In the olden days, these didn't used to move, they were fixed. So consequently, and that you moved it onto your piece of wood, it burnt the piece of wood because that wasn't moving and that was. So then they came up with these revolving ones. So you can buy these from Axminster, anywhere really, and the tips that you could usually come out, you put a thicker tip in or a thicker one, or various shapes. I've just got that one plus a chunkier one. Again, Axminster, I think that's around about a 60-degree angle. I think this is called a quill, isn't it? Is that called a quill?
I'll take your word for it.
And what happens on the quill, on this one there's markings, so there it is 0. So if I move it on, it goes up to ½ an inch, quarter of an inch, an inch, so you know how much you've got sticking out, and that helps when you're drilling, which is the next thing we'll come to. So if I just rewind that, knock that out. What we didn't talk about is the Jacob's chuck. Again, the Morse taper is the same at both ends. It's an M2, Morse taper 2. So consequently, your drive centre that goes in there and your tailstock that goes in there, the taper is the same on both of them. Okay, I'll say it, it's obvious. That goes in there, it does not revolve. You would not put it in there because I'll let you work it out. You just don't do it. Jacob's chuck, Morse taper 2, push it in, mainly used for drilling. I know there's a hole there already. When you're drilling with the Jacob's chuck, always go on a slow speed. So if I was going to drill this, which I will, it'll be on its slowest speed, and the slowest this is 400. So you want to between 400, 500, maybe even 600. A lot of it depends on if your wood is wet or your wood is dry. Because what can happen, that, when it goes in, can bind. And what will happen, it can start to turn in there, which is what you don't want it to do. So if I was going to drill there, just before where you want to drill, lock it off, turn your machine on. Now I put my hand on there, I hold that. I've always done it. Some say you shouldn't do it in case it does start to revolve and you catch your fingers. I've always done it and I'll continue to do it. So just literally, can you see it winding on? There it is. If your piece of wood is wet and you're not holding that and it goes deeper and deeper, that can bind on the inside of the wood, and that will actually start to turn, in which case you're going to have to turn your lathe off, take that off and try and withdraw it. It does happen, it happens to me because I turn a lot of wet wood and it binds. Don't increase your speed, and always go always wind it in fairly slowly, and every now and again withdraw it. And for safety reasons you don't do that. You might have a brush nearby where you get rid of the shavings. You will of course turn the lathe off there. Okay, so then we will go in a bit further, withdraw, turn the lathe off. We're doing it right this time, Martin, and then brush it off. Be careful because that does get hot. Another little tip is just a moment. I have. What's a good idea is to wax your tip. Not only will it help it go, will it go in a little bit better, but you'll probably find you get some squealing as well. Do you get squealing when you do it? That'll stop it. So a little bit of wax just on there. Another little tip. Tip number 3. Really, is there anything else to say for that? What else could you use that for in the tailstock? You can't really, can you? What you can do is you can use it in the headstock. I take that off, lock that off, get rid of the chuck. Use the knockout bar.
Not all of them have knockout bars, do they? My jet lathe,
It's self
ejects.
Yeah, well,
you just wind it back.
Right,
It's
okay.
modern. It's a posh one.
Yeah, all right. So yours self-ejects.
Yes.
Yeah, but like a typhoon plane. Yeah. Well, mine you have to use manual labour. Right, this can go in there, and we were just saying Martin has used this in the past for holding. Well, you could for a finial. No, you couldn't. Thinking about that, no, you couldn't. What's going to happen when you turn this on? Even though it's friction driven there, it will, believe me, it will come out. It wants to come out. If you were using, what can we say?
I've used it for buffing. My buffing set.
Oh, you see,
That's what I've used it for.
yeah,
Buffing set. I've used
you
that.
have a mandrel, do you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, being more advanced than you, Martin.
Oh right.
Yeah. I don't have that. I have one that fits in the chuck. So.
I got the cheap version.
You may have a knockout version. You may have a self. Yeah. Right. I was doing this. What did I use it for the other day? There was something I put in there, and I found out that this was coming out. Do you know? And I can't even. Can you? What would I have in there? Turning.
I used it initially. I have used it for holding a piece of wood, but it was only because I didn't have a set of pin jaws for my chuck, and
Yeah.
I needed to go down to something really quite thin.
Yeah.
And that's the only use of that.
But did you find this was?
It has. I find if I use the buffing system with it, I have to just with a rubber-faced mallet just tap it in a little bit to stop it from coming out, or it will come out.
Right.
Not ideal.
I honestly can't remember what I did, but the way I counteracted it was let's put that. Where is it? Where's the tailstock on, Martin? Have you had it? Oh, it's there. We're going to cover reverse chucking at some point, and this is a little reverse chuck. So this would go in the jaws, and whatever I wanted to take the foot off would go over there. But then I had another thought. If I was to drill the bottom out, like so, that would fit over there. So consequently, if I've got a piece of wood between there, I wish I could remember, I can't. Anyway, that comes up, you tighten it, that moves out, hang on, it's coming. What was it? It was a screw chuck. I was making a screw chuck, which is what again we'll be doing at some stage. Right, give us a screw chuck. What I did, oh yeah, we're going off kilter here a little bit, but never mind. When I made the screw chuck, it wasn't running particularly true. So I thought the way to get around that is to put that in there and hold it, so as I could straighten that up so as it would run true. But I found it was coming, the whole chuck was coming out. And I thought, well, if I bring that up there, put that in there, it's going to do the job. But then again, it's going to wear that nice point off there, which you don't want. So I thought, oh, there's the answer. Move it up, holds it. Nice little tip. Tip number 4.